Hello, welcome to my second video for Spinal Cord Injury Awareness Month. A lot of people associate spinal cord injuries with wheelchair use. And while that oftentimes is the case, it's not always the case. There's a whole group of people out there with permanent spinal cord injuries and the deficits and issues that can go along with that who walk. Many unassisted, some with assistance. So you may see somebody with a walker, a pair of trekking poles, a cane, maybe with a brace on their lower leg and foot. Many of us walk unassisted, maybe with just a little bit of a limp or a hitch in our gait. And then some walkers you would never know. You would never know that there's any problems or issues. But to the person doing the walking, I guarantee you that they know. Anybody who's walking after any kind of a spinal cord injury, they know the difference between walking pre-injury and post-injury. I can guarantee you that. You may know somebody who walks one day and is in a wheelchair another day or in another situation, and that happens. While most of us would love to walk all of the time completely unassisted, there's times when, the cane is important to use and necessary. There's times when a wheelchair might be necessary. Today I'd like to talk a little bit about walking after an SCI and at least my experience with it. The things that affect me most in walking, I suppose, and these aren't going to be in order, these are just the things that affect me because different days, they're in different order. First thing is I suppose the neuropathy in my left foot. So in my left foot and ankle, I've got neuropathy, it's nerve damage, so there's a lot of pain in that foot. So just stepping down on it is painful in itself, so that's kind of a hindrance to walking, when it's uncomfortable to walk. It's nerve damage and that's just painful stuff. The other thing is that there's some weakness, there's some imbalance in the muscles in that foot, so it tends to drop. So what that foot will do when I'm walking, if I'm not paying attention, keeping real close tabs on it, as I step forward, it'll want to push down as I try to bring it through the step and catch on the ground behind me, which is going to send me tumbling down over that direction. The right foot, on the other hand, that one likes to roll. So if I don't get my weight under my right foot, or if I don't get my center of gravity proper with my right foot, if it's not flat and perfectly under my pelvic bone, if I'm off just to the side just a little bit on my step with that foot, that's going to send me tumbling down over in that direction. So those things I just have to constantly be monitoring. Every step I take, I'm paying attention. Another issue I have, obviously, is there's some loss of motor control or motor activity. So there's muscles that don't fire or don't fire completely, and they don't always fire in synchronization with the other muscles, so they end up kind of fighting each other is what happens. So every step is effort. It's because there's just not the proper use of muscles going on or the proper activation of muscles going on. It feels like my legs are filled with sand or made of cement or something like that they're just almost impossibly heavy to lift at times. And then because of that I get fatigued. So I get real fatigued, from too much walking. Too many stairs is real tough. And the more fatigued I get, the more these other things start to become bigger issues. Other thing I have is spasticity. Spasticity is an uncontrollable reflex because you've lost communication between the brain and the body. The brain can't step in and mitigate this reflex reaction called an arc reflex. So it's allowed to run rampant, it's allowed to run out of control. What it causes is these involuntary and uncontrollable muscle contractions. Sometimes they're sudden and violent, like a spasm. Everybody's probably had a muscle spasm at time. Well, imagine that in an entire muscle group or series of muscle groups that doesn't stop. It just keeps spasming, pounding. Sometimes it's a lower level type of contraction, but it's constant. So just think of, like a clenched fist nonstop. You're clenching your fist all the time. How tired would your arm get? How sore would your muscles get? And how hard would it be to use that arm in that kind of a state? And that's what spasticity is. It's probably the first symptom I really noticed, hardcore after my accident. was my legs would lock up. They would just freeze up on me. With the muscles so tight and the tendons and the ligaments so tight that I couldn't move my legs at all. I always thought that paralysis was the lack of muscle engagement. I guess I didn't know that there's this other situation where they can lock up so rigid, the muscles are so overactivated and so out of control in their spastic actions that you can't move either, that they're just, everything is just locked up. If I get spastic from like the mid thighs down, and that's kind of where it'll start, is in the back of the leg here behind the knee. Then I'm Frankenstein walking, but I'm walking. Sometimes it'll get kind of crazy and it'll get up into my hips. And when that happens, if my hip flexors go spastic, then I can't walk at all. Then I'm just stuck. If I'm standing when it happens, I'm stuck standing until it relaxes. The other thing that I have is I have loss of proprioception. So what that is it's the ability to tell where you are in space or where you are in your environment. More specifically, where your limbs are in your environment. Well, what that causes is because I can't really tell where my legs are in space, I can't sense that. When I pick my foot up off the ground, I'm immediately starting to lose sense of where that foot is and where that leg is. More specifically, I'm losing track of where it is in relationship to the ground. How that feels to me, the sensation I get, is that the ground is moving. I know it's not. I realize it's stable, solid, flat ground. But the sensation, the way my brain interprets this, is if the ground is in motion as I step forward, searching for where it is, and then not knowing really till I make contact. The best way I could describe that is if you've ever seen one of those blow-up bouncy houses that kids play in, jump around in, and if you've ever tried to walk across the floor of one of those things, it's sort of like that. And it doesn't matter how strong your legs are, it doesn't matter how coordinated you are, it doesn't matter how much endurance you have. Walking in a bouncy house is tough. And that's a little bit what walking with an SCI for me is it's a little bit like I'm constantly working and focusing and thinking about that vertical plane, my center of gravity, and where I am. And because I can't really feel that, I've come up with tricks. One of them is I look down a lot. If I look down, I can see my feet, I can see the ground, and my brain can use that information to put together the pieces of the puzzle that I'm kind of missing because of the legs not having the information. So if I look down, I'm good. I can walk that way. The other thing I do is I touch things. If I'm walking without a cane and I'm not trying not to look down, you've got to pay attention to the world out there too. You'll notice I'm touching the doorway. I'll touch a piece of trim. It just something about just having my hand in contact with something that's in my environment and solid and stable gives my brain just a little bit of information that I need to understand where I am in that space. So that helps a lot. And then of course, that's why I would use a cane. I don't use a cane necessarily because of leg strength or I'm leaning on the cane for support because of weak leg muscles. I'm using it because it's another piece of information I can put on the ground and help my brain understand as I'm walking where the ground is as I'm moving through space, while allowing me to look forward instead of having to constantly look down, which it's a dangerous way to walk. It's also an unhealthy way to walk. Really hard on the neck, and I'm all about doing things that are nice for the neck. So I have some ongoing deficits that have been a challenge to walking and will continue to be a challenge to walking, but I can do it. So I'm super grateful and consider myself extremely fortunate. There's also been a lot of hard work. Anybody who's walking after any severity of an SCI, there's been some hard work. It just doesn't come back to you, and it just doesn't stay with you without work. Between physical therapy and occupational therapy, and then just ongoing health and wellness that has to be at a pretty high level to function with an injury like an SCI. Somebody I know said that after an SCI, you spend the rest of your life training for a marathon that you don't ever get to run in. I want to be clear though that it's not just hard work, that there's this huge component of luck or good fortune. The spinal cord is so delicate and it's so individual that the difference in an injury of just a few thousandths of an inch one way or the other can make the difference between having the opportunity to do the work, having a body that responds at all to the work, or how much your body responds to the work. I've been lucky. I've been able to get strength back. I've been able to get endurance back. I've been able to get a certain degree of coordination back. I can't work out hard enough to get proprioception back. It just doesn't work that way. Actually, spasticity at times has gotten worse or more severe because of working out. As the leg muscles got stronger, those muscle spasms became more and more intense. So there's this balance you constantly go through as you train for that marathon. I can take credit for the hard work. I can't take credit for the good fortune. I can only give thanks for that. Thank you for listening.